Welcome to my kitchen. My name is Lady Indana of House Sorbus and Griffin Hall of Chimeronean, and I'd like to show you today how to make French onion soup tarts. In order to make French onion soup tarts, you're going to need the following ingredients. 1 stick or 8 tablespoons of butter, 4 medium onions, a half a cup of broth. Today I will be using beef broth, but if you'd like to make this a vegetarian dish, then you can use vegetable broth. We have half a cup of mozzarella and half a cup of Swiss cheese that has been shredded, and then we have phyllo shells. Now for these you can use pre-baked puff pastry shells or phyllo shells, whatever you can find. They're usually found in the freezer section, but they're pre-baked. And that just saves you the step of baking them. Our first step today is going to be to cut the onions. So I'm going to assume that you've never cut an onion before. So we're going to want to start by taking the papery skin off. And there are a couple of ways that you can achieve our goal of long, thin strips. You can see I only have some of the paper off, but all of the stuff that's easy to come off has been removed. So we're going to start using our knife. We're going to start by trimming the top off the onion. And then we have a nice flat surface to work with, and we're going to cut directly through the roots. Now, the easiest way to cut the long, thin slices from this juncture, after peeling off what is remaining of the skin, which is now much easier, would be to cut it like this in strips. But instead of, well, actually I'm just going to go ahead and do that. The other way that you could do it is to cut it in strips this way, but I think that this is going to be our best bet today. So we're going to go for relatively thin strips, and I'm putting these straight into the pan. And we'll see you once all these are cut. So now that all 4 of the onions are cut into slices, we're going to bring these over to the stove, where we have a large skillet to cook them in. So I'm going to start off by putting this on a medium heat, and we're going to take our whole stick of butter and get that melted. So as you can see, the butter has begun to melt, and now it fully coats the bottom of the pan. So we're going to go ahead and carefully add the onions. Now these will take a long time to cook. We're going to check back every 5 minutes so that you can see their progress. You're going to want to be stirring them to make sure that they are evenly cooking. And when they first start out, you're only going to need to stir them occasionally, but as it gets closer and closer to being done, you're going to need to stir them more often. You can see I have basically a full pot here, and you'll see just how much they shrink once they're done cooking. So we'll check back in 5 minutes. This is about 5 minutes in, and right now I'm mostly just stirring to break up the onions into their individual pieces and make sure that every piece gets coated with butter. We are at about 15 minutes now. You can see that there's still some liquid in the pan. I have the heat kind of on a medium-high at the moment, and once most of that liquid has left the pan, I'm going to take the temperature down, but that might not be for another 10 minutes, depending. You can also tell by the steam coming off the onions. We are at about 40 minutes. There's definitely starting to be some good browning. I'm gonna turn the temperature down to prevent burning at this point. Probably to about a medium-low heat. You can see that what was on the bottom of the pan has browned. We want to get a nice brown color throughout all of the onions. We're now at 45 minutes, and at this point you're going to be stirring every couple of minutes to make sure that you're not getting anything burning. We are now at 1 hour and 10 minutes, and as you can see, just about all of the liquid has evaporated out of the pan, and we are left with some golden, delicious, fried in butter onions. At this point, I am going to add the broth of your choice. I'm using beef broth. You can also use vegetable broth. And I'm going to let that, stir that in, and what that does is it helps the darker bits kind of redistribute that delicious caramelized flavor throughout the onions. And then we're giving that a nice good stir. This should smell absolutely amazing, just so you know. Alright, we're going to kill the heat, and I'm going to transfer this to a bowl. We want this to be cool enough to handle, so I am going to stick it in the fridge, and I am also going to preheat my oven. So we're going to preheat it to 400, and I'll see you in a little bit. So the onions have had some time to cool, and our oven is preheated. If you want, you can make the onions ahead of time and freeze them, and if you do that, then I would hold the broth from being added to the onions, freeze them without it, and then when you reheat it up in the broth to help prevent burning while you're reheating them. And that's very helpful if you are, say, cooking for a crowd, which unfortunately most of us aren't nowadays. So the next step is going to be to evenly distribute our onions into these shells, which I have placed on a tinfoil lined baking sheet. No need to put any spray or anything on. The tinfoil is mostly there to make the cleanup easier. So I'm going to go ahead and evenly distribute the onions. So we have our tart shells filled with our onions. So we're now going to take our mixture of half a cup of shredded mozzarella, half a cup of Swiss cheese, and we're going to top our tarts. Now that I'm completely satisfied with the amount of cheese on top of each of the tarts, I'm going to carefully bring these over to the oven, where I'm going to put them on the top rack. The goal for them in the oven is for the cheese to melt, get bubbly, and start to brown, which should be about 10-15 minutes, but I would definitely keep an eye on them. 15 minutes has passed, so let's take a look. Oh yeah, these look amazing. This is going to be the hardest part of the recipe. You have to wait for them to cool before you eat them. It's been about 5 minutes, And these are still very hot, but cool enough to taste, so let's see how we did.